All right, today we are diving deep into a story that, let's be honest, you probably think you already know inside and out. Cinderella.
I mean, you know the basics, right? A sweet, kind girl, a wicked stepmother, a magical fairy godmother, some helpful animals, a prince, and of course, that famous glass slipper. But what if I told you that the version we all grew up with is just one tiny piece of the puzzle, and that its original message is actually a lot more, well, cynical? And maybe even a little more true to life.
So, let's back up. Where did our version of Cinderella even come from? Well, pretty much everything we picture. The pumpkin turning into a coach, the mice becoming horses, those glass slippers, it all comes from one single telling of the story, written way back in 1697 by a French author named Charles Perrault. We're talking over 300 years ago.
Now, Perrault wasn't just spinning a simple rags to riches fairy tale. No. He actually included two very specific morals at the end of his story. And trust me, they are way more surprising and kind of cynical than the Disney version we all know and love. So to really get what he was saying, we've got to start at the beginning.
To really understand Perrault's big message, first you have to see Cinderella's world for what it was, which, as you'll see, all starts with her life sitting in the cinders.
I mean, this is literally where her name comes from. After she's forced to do all the dirtiest, meanest work in the house, she'd go sit in the corner of the fireplace. The original text says, this is why they called her Cinder Wench. A bit harsh, right? It was her younger, kinder stepsister who tweaked it to Cinderella. So her name is literally born from soot and hardship.
Right away, Perrault paints this really stark picture. On one side, you've got Cinderella. She has this unparalleled goodness, and she just patiently puts up with everything. And on the other side, her stepmother, the proudest and most haughty woman you can imagine, and her daughters, who are always dressed very richly. It's that classic setup, you know? Pure good versus total vanity.
And then, the thing that changes everything happens. The king's son decides to throw a huge ball, and he invites all the important, fashionable people. This invitation, well, it's the spark that's going to light the fuse for the entire magical part of the story.
So, with the stage perfectly set, Perrault brings in the one thing that makes his version of the story so iconic, a little touch of magic.
Just as Cinderella is crying her eyes out, poof, her fairy godmother shows up. And she makes a promise, but it's not a freebie. It comes with a condition. This isn't just about wishing for something. It's a direct reward for Cinderella's goodness all this time. The godmother basically says, you keep being a good girl, and I'll figure out a way for you to go.
And then we get the famous transformation sequence. But it's not just a quick wave of a wand. Oh no, Perrault gets super specific. A pumpkin from the garden? Now it's a golden coach. 6 mice from the mousetrap? A fine set of horses. A single rat? He's your jolly coachman. And 6 lizards from behind the watering can? They're now 6 footmen. And finally, her gross, raggedy clothes become this incredible gown of gold and silver, totally covered in jewels.
But of course, there's always a catch, isn't there? All this incredible magic has an expiration date. Midnight. The second the clock strikes 12, everything, and I mean everything, is going to turn right back into what it was before. And that one little rule is what creates all the suspense.
Okay, so she's all dressed up with a very strict deadline. Cinderella heads off to the ball. And this, right here, is where the story builds to its most legendary moment.
And at the ball, she is an absolute hit. The prince is totally smitten from the second he sees her. Perrault makes a big deal about how she danced with incredible grace. But okay, pay attention to this next part, because it's actually really important. She goes out of her way to be super polite to her own sisters, showing them 1,000 civilities, even though they have no idea who she is. She's having such a good time that she almost completely forgets about her godmother's warning.
Then she hears it, the clock starting to strike 12. She completely panics and just bolts out of there. In her rush, she leaves behind one of her glass slippers, which Perrault calls the prettiest in the whole world. And the prince, of course, scoops it right up. Now his quest can begin.
So what happens next unfolds pretty logically. The prince makes this big proclamation. He'll marry whoever the slipper fits. They try it on everyone. Princesses, duchesses, you name it, but no luck. When they get to Cinderella's house, the stepsisters try to cram their feet in, but there's no way. And then Cinderella, kind of laughing, just asks, "Can I try?" And what do you know? It fits like a glove. She pulls out the other slipper, her godmother shows up again to fix her outfit, and her sisters fall at her feet begging for forgiveness, which she gives them. She marries the prince and even hooks her sisters up with husbands. So perfect happy ending, right? Well, not quite.
Because this is the part of the story where Charles Perrault himself basically taps us on the shoulder to explain what this whole fairy tale is really about. And yeah, it's probably not what you're thinking.
So what's the first big moral of the story? Perrault literally writes that while being beautiful is great and all, graciousness is priceless and of even greater value. He's basically saying that when it comes to winning someone's heart, having good manners is way more important than having a great hairdo.
And that is the first huge takeaway here. It's a lesson in how to behave in high society. Remember how Cinderella showed 1,000 civilities to her sisters at the ball? That wasn't just a throwaway detail. For Perrault, who was writing for the fancy court of King Louis XIV, this was the whole point. Success wasn't just about being pretty, it was about having grace and good manners.
But just when you think the whole lesson is just be a good person, Perrault hits you with a second moral that is so much more cynical. He says that things like intelligence and courage and common sense, they're all great, but even these may fail to bring you success without the blessing of a godfather or a godmother. Whoa.
This completely reframes the whole story, doesn't it? Perrault is telling us, straight up, that being good and talented is simply not enough. Hard work and a great personality will only get you so far. To really, truly make it in the world, you need connections. You need a powerful person in your corner, a godfather or a godmother, to open the right doors for you. Suddenly, the fairy godmother isn't just magic. She's a metaphor for having friends in high places. And that leaves us with this fascinating and honestly very modern question. Here we have a 300-year-old fairy tale arguing that, yeah, being a good person is important, but at the end of the day, it's your connections that can make all the difference. So what do you think? After all this time, is it still more about who you know than what you know? Something to think about.